All right, here we go with episode 27 of the North Dakota Softball All-Stars podcast. Got a good one planned for you today, and we're actually going to start in the world of college softball. A couple of teams in the state of North Dakota on just tremendous runs here about the midway point, or maybe even a little bit later than that, in the college softball season. We're going to talk about North Dakota State University and Valley City State University. Also, going to take a look at the top 10 preseason polls from Class A and Class B and how each of those 20 teams have fared throughout the first couple of weeks of the season here. Actually, we're really going to take a look at who's gotten in games and who hasn't due to good old Mother Nature. Also going to take a look at some of the big things that happened in these first handful of games throughout the state of North Dakota. A no-hitter, a perfect game, a game-winning grand slam, a lot going on. But let's just get right into it here for episode 27 of the North Dakota Softball All-Stars podcast, and let's talk about North Dakota State University. Now, this podcast is being recorded in the afternoon of Saturday, April 13th, and that means tomorrow, Sunday, April 14th, the Bison are going to christen their new field, Thoroldson Park there. Oh my goodness, it's beautiful with the turf and the grandstands and the press box, parking lot right there. Among other things, it's NDSU versus South Dakota State at 1 o'clock, and then immediately following probably a 3:15-ish type of first pitch in Game 2 of the doubleheader. And then Monday, April 15th, Tax Day, the two teams do it again at noon over at Thoroldson. Both games can be heard on Bison 1660. But the Bison are on an incredible run, a record-breaking run. They've won 18 consecutive ball games, propelling them to a record of 28-11. So starting with the most recent game and working backwards, here's how it's gone. Bison beat Portland State 2-1. They beat Santa Clara 9-1. They beat Seattle 9-7 and 8-1. That was all out in Seattle last weekend. Back it up. Western Illinois, the Bison beat 5-4, 10-7, and 12-0. Some conference games there. Purdue-Fort Wayne, the Bison beat 7-0, 5-0, and 11-1. Then we're working our way back into the middle of March into some tournaments where the Bison beat Florida Gulf Coast 3-2. They beat Chattanooga 5-1. They beat Purdue out of the Big Ten by a mark of 3-0 on March 16th. The Bison topped Wichita State 6-4. Towson 1-0. Eastern Illinois 7-5. And Butler 3-2. They also beat Stony Brook 7-0 back on Sunday, March 10th in Boca Raton. Then you got to go all the way back to March 9th against Purdue, where the Bison lost by a 4-1 score in Boca Raton. So 18 consecutive for the Bison, hoping to make it 21 with a perfect sweep of South Dakota State Sunday, April 14th into Monday, April 15th. Darren Mueller's got a good thing going there. The Bison 28-11. 6-0 in conference play. They've won 18 straight. They're 9-5 in true road games, 19-6 in neutral site games, and of course 0-0. They haven't played a home game, and they're 28-11. My goodness, what a program there at NDSU. But not to be outdone, Valley City State University. They are having a season really unlike any other. 31-2. For the VCSU Vikings, 11-1 in the North Star Conference, and I mean this is some type of run that is going on here. Now, if you rewind yourselves back to February when everything got going, I mean it was unstoppable. It started like this: 4-0, 7-4. These are just scores. 5-1 over a good Jamestown team. 13-4. 2-1, 8-0, 8-0, 7-0, 7-0, 12-5, 8-0, 10-6, 3-1, 13-0. Stop myself there because really the whole thing here is the unbelievable low number of runs that they have been allowing at Valley City State University. Back on March 8th, the Vikings lost 6-1 to Concordia University. They saw a bunch of games rained out, but they just kept winning. They kept winning. They did lose to Bellevue 7-4 back on April the 6th, but since then they came back and beat Bellevue twice. They've taken 3 out of 4 from Bellevue. Now they're hoping to get games in this weekend as well. Mother Nature of course, trying to interfere with everybody with this April snowstorm we got. But just an incredible 31-2 record so far for Valley City State University. And just looking at what they've got left after this weekend, they've got Waldorf for 4, Mayville State for 4, Presentation for 4, and then it's NSAA tournament time. So Vikings, what an incredible season they've got going on at Valley City State University. And now it's time to take a look at the top 10 preseason polls, which will be the active poll here for at least another week as we try to wait for everybody to get some games in before we go round 2 of the coaches' polls here. But let's start with Class A. The number 1 ranked team in the coaches' polls, and quite frankly, it wasn't all that close, was Dickinson. And now Dickinson is off to just a start of 3-5. They played Minot back on March 29th, and they swept them 20-9 and 17-5. But then they ran into some trouble, a 9-7 loss to Bismarck Century, followed by a 15-13 loss to Century. Dickinson then split a doubleheader with Valley City, losing 13-12 and winning 12-2. And then most recently, prior to the recording of this podcast, they are playing some games today, but they lost 13-1 and 8-7 to Bismarck. So a bit of a slow start for Amanda Mickey's bunch, but they do it right. They play a whole bunch of doubleheaders. They're going to get a lot of games in, and Dickinson will undoubtedly be a pretty dangerous club by the end of the season. The number 2 ranked team just saw its streak of 27 billion consecutive state championships come to a close. The West Fargo Packers voted number 2 in the coaches' polls, the preseason edition. They've played just 2 games. Darn it, Mother Nature. They beat 2 Minnesota clubs, 13-5 over Thief River Falls and 10-2 over a traditionally pretty good Badger Greenbush Middle River team over in northwestern Minnesota. So the Packers are at 2. That means the defending state champion Minot Club is in at number 3. And again, these are scores through Friday, April 12th. At that time, Minot just 1-3. Lost those 2 to Dickinson that we mentioned earlier, 20-9 and 17-5. And then split with Legacy, winning 15-9 and losing by a mark of 5-4. The number 4 ranked team, the Valley City Highliners, with a new head coach this season in Hillary Flatt. They split the season opening doubleheader against Bismarck, losing 9-2 and winning 12-9. Came back and split with Dickinson, winning 13-12 and losing 12-2. We'll talk more about that 13-12 game a little bit later in the podcast. The number 5 ranked team out of the chute is Bismarck Century, and Bismarck Century is likely going to move up in the next coaches poll because they are 4-0 with that 9-7 and 15-13 sweep of Dickinson. They also beat Williston 10-0 and 12-1. Bismarck High, they won the EDC in both 2017 and 2018, coming to the season sitting in the number 6 spot. They split with Jamestown in the opening week, Monday, April 1, losing 11-10 and winning 13-2. They then split with Valley City, winning 9-2 and losing 12-9. And then the Dickinson sweep for Bismarck, 13-1 and 8-7 in 8 innings. Got to swing it back to the EDC for the number 7 ranked preseason team. And that's Fargo North, played in the EDC championship game for the 2nd year in a row. Off to a bit of a slow start this year, dropping the opener 8-5 to Class B Hankinson Tri-State. Then took down a Fargo Shanley 11-2. Followed that up, losing 11-8 to Moorhead in a game that was 8-8 into the bottom of the 6th inning. Spartans of Fargo North 1-2 here in the early goings. The number 8 ranked team, the Cheyenne Mustangs. Everything on their schedule postponed. They haven't played a game yet. Hoping to play Monday, April 15th at Moorhead, and if they can get out on the turf field, I would say with the weather, that game is likely to be played. The number 9 ranked team is Grand Forks Red River, and they didn't play any games until this Saturday here, April 13th. Not going to include those scores in the podcast because those games are still being played at time of recording. The number 10 team in Class A, the Jamestown Blue Jays, also with a new head coach this year. They split with Bismarck, as mentioned earlier, winning 11-10 and losing 13-2. And then they took a pair from Watford City, 19-2 and 24-4. So there's a look at the Class A top 10 in the preseason polls and how they've done so far. Again, we'll probably see another poll April 22nd or April 29th, depending on when teams can get in enough games to make it fair to do another coaches poll. Now let's take a look at the Class B top 10 and what teams have got games in, because it's really hit and miss here. But we'll start with what is early, maybe the game of the year, at least in Class B. Central Cass and Kindred Richland played in about 32-degree weather, wind chill around 20, a game shown on the ND Sports Channel. It was a thriller. Central Cass, number 1 in the state, defending state champions, 5, and Kindred Richland 4, a game that was decided in 8 innings. It was a great battle on a chilly day, but the two teams were both very excited to play, and Kindred kind of a wild card team this year. A very good battle on opening day. The number 2 ranked team in the Class B coaches poll, well, that's Des Lacs, Burlington, Lewis, and Clark, and they lost the opener 1-0 to Bishop Ryan. We'll hear from Bishop Ryan again here later. Bounced back in a big way with 26-0 win over Glenburn and a 13-1 win over West Hope, Newburgh-Bottineau. So Des Lacs, Burlington, Lewis, and Clark, another new head coach, they are 2-1 on the season. The number 3 ranked team in Class B is Matt Chandler's Thompson Tommies, and they have yet to be able to get one in, thanks to Mother Nature. They're hoping to do so a couple of times in this upcoming week. We had mentioned Kindred Richland, 5-4 losers to Central Cass in a really, really good game. They're the number 4 team in Class B to start the season. Those Bishop Ryan Lions got off on a bit of a strange foot, although this Kenmare Bowbells MLS bunch, 11, Bishop Ryan 10, that Kenmare Bowbells MLS bunch is off to a very good start. Then the Lions came back, beat Des Lacs, Burlington, Lewis, and Clark, as mentioned, 1-0. And no, this isn't a typo. They then beat Stanley 42-2. Wowza. And then came back and beat Beulah 18-6. So Bishop Ryan is 3-1. As we continue through, it's the Heart River Cougars. They're 2-0 on the season. Harvey Wells County was the opener, and it was Heart River 10, Harvey Wells County 0. We'll get more on that game a little bit later in the podcast. And then Heart River beat a pretty good Velvet Drake Anna Moose Sawyer team by a mark of 3-2. Continuing to move through the Class B coaches polls, we've hit the Hillsborough Central Valley Boroughs, and they haven't played yet. They have not been able to find a game. Coach Corey Erickson spent a lot of time on his field, and then Mother Nature struck with cold temperatures and ultimately more of the snow. The Grafton Spoilers, another team with a new head coach this year, another team that has not been able to play a game. In at number 9, it's Mayport CG, another team with a new head coach, another team unable to play a game here in the first couple of weeks of the season. And then rounding out the top 10 in Class B, another team from the West, that Velvet Drake Anna Moose Sawyer Club. The Aggies are 2-1. They lost the opener 3-2 to Heart River, came back and beat Beulah 13-2, and took down Washburn by a mark of 18-8. Now, if you want to see all the scores that are going on, we link right to them on our new website, ndsballstars.com. That's where you can see your favorite teams, how they're faring. You can look at region standings. You can look at day-by-day results. You can see the results of today's game. Like out in Minot, you got Minot, Dickinson, Grand Forks Central, Grand Forks Red River, all doing a battle and a little quadtacular out there. Just good to see teams getting in games. And looking at the forecast, hopefully we can get some of these fields dried out and get more and more games over the next handful of days, if not a week or 10 days. We've also had some really good stuff happening, individual efforts throughout the state of North Dakota, even though we haven't played a ton of games. Let's start with Abby Kessel, one of the top pitchers in the state, regardless of class or grade. She pitches for Heart River, and on opening day, she threw a no-hitter against Harvey Wells County. Brooklyn Benno, she threw a perfect game for Des Lacs, Burlington, Lewis, and Clark. Now, here's the thing. I don't really care who you're playing against or when you do it. Throwing a perfect game is a big deal, and she did that in a 26-0 win over Glenburg. Congratulations there. And you thought we were done. You thought, oh, we got a no-hitter. We got a perfect game. No. We got one more thing for you, and that would be Aaron Anderson of Valley City hit a grand slam late in the game against Dickinson. Ultimately, Valley City splits that doubleheader with Dickinson, but the big grand slam from Aaron Anderson there was a big deal for the Valley City Highlanders. And I love this tweet from Barry D. Johnson. You can tweet us at NDSB All-Stars at any time. He says his big tidbit, his big surprise, his good thing of the week is that the snow is melting. And yes, he sent that out before the snow turned around and came back. And just real quick, I want to talk about a couple of tournaments this year. We won't get many of them in. Thanks a lot again, Mother Nature. But two that I think are pretty cool. First of all, Central Cass is going to host East-West battle of sorts between teams from Class B East and Class B West. A lot of great matchups. That's later in April at Central Cass. Really looking forward to see what the Squirrels do with that. They're such tremendous hosts in the new Cost Field with the turf and all that jazz. Definitely going to be a good event there to get to if you possibly can. I believe that's the last Friday and Saturday of April. And then if you fast forward to May 11th and 12th and head about 20 miles east, you'll be at Mickelson Park in Fargo for the 3rd annual AB Clash. This is just a fun concept. I love it. I've been part of it coaching the first 2 years, one on the B side, one on the AC side. But you get the 4 Fargo schools, North, South, Davies, and Shanley. And the 4 closest B schools to Fargo, which are Kindred Richland, Central Cass, Hillsborough Central Valley, and Northern Cass. And those 4 teams, it's a little weekend of playing the other class. So you get 3 games in against B if you're an A team, and vice versa if you are a B team. A couple of good tournaments there. And we, North Dakota Softball All-Stars, are in the beginning stages of planning, so no guarantees here, but to put together a big old invitational tournament that will start in Fargo next year if we can get everything together, inviting teams from the whole state of North Dakota as well as teams from Minnesota, and we hope to get them early enough that we can get some Minnesota teams into this thing. You know, the Detroit Lakes is the Hollies, Badger Greenbush, Middle River, Thief River Falls, Detroit Lakes, on and on and on. We're going to invite a whole bunch, and we're going to get together hopefully next April in Fargo, maybe the first weekend of May. We're still looking at dates, and have a big old deal, opportunity to get all these teams together. Could have a nice little event with it. We've been talking about maybe announcing the 2020 All-Stars as part of that weekend. More details to come. See if we can swing everything together, and then, of course, get Mother Nature to cooperate. So that's all the stuff going on right now, or at least a good chunk of it in the state of North Dakota. Please check us out anytime at NDSB All-Stars on Twitter. You can search the same on Facebook, and our new website is www.ndsballstars.com. And we've got exciting things to come. By the end of the month here, we will know who the 2019 Shield Softball All-Stars are. Those games are to be played June 3rd. That's the Monday after the state tournament, a doubleheader at Mickelson and Fargo. And on June 4th, over in Bismarck, Starion Bank Turf Field, right there at the Shield Sports Complex. Very excited to be in Bismarck for the first time after a couple of years in Mandan. This whole thing's going to get going in earnest very soon. Hopefully as early as next week. We get a much more regular schedule. Boy, it's deja vu all over again. Sure feels a lot like last year. Remember, reach out anytime. When you tweet out your scores, include at NDSB All-Stars. We'll share out as much as we can, and we will talk to you again next week, hopefully, with another edition of an ND Softball All-Stars podcast. We just, need some games. That's the key right now. Thanks a lot for listening. My name's Tim Howe, president of the North Dakota Softball All-Stars and the host of this podcast. We'll talk to you again soon.